Ever wonder if things can just be born evil? In this enlightened age of ours, concepts like good and evil are often painted as outmoded and archaic, even. According to modern thoughts, people, animals too, obviously, are simply products of their environments and no more responsible for their actions than a twig in a stream. But I know better. Some things are just born bad. About 10 years ago, we had a German Shepherd named Duchess that had a litter of puppies, 7 in all. Six looked like any other shepherd you ever seen. The seventh, however, was a snowy white, not a true albino, just white furred with a black nose and blue eyes. There was no doubt, and there was never any doubt about which one we were keeping out of the litter. We named her Princess. Before the end of the 6 months, any plans we had of giving away or selling the others became a mute point, as all the other ones were dead. We just find them at a rate about one a month. Not mangled or anything, just as dead as if they had died in their sleep. At first we thought maybe their mother, it being her first litter and all, was accidentally crushing them or smothering them. Later we had no doubt about what was killing them. Within a year, she came to dominate her mother, her father, tough old alpha that he was, and to a degree, us too. Her parents shed away from her. When we put food out, when we put out their food, she ate to her heart's content, unchallenged by the other two. Once I tried to shoo her away to let the other two eat, and she snarled at me, barking those perfectly white fangs to her acknowledgement, to her incredulously black gums, and loosening a growl so deep I felt it in my gut more than I heard it. After that, I left her alone too. I often wonder if parents of serial killers know that they have a monster in the making. I mean, sure, some of them are to blame for how their kids turned out, products of the fucked up households and the systematic abuse of all possible flavors. But then there are the ones that seem to be true anomalies. If those families I'm curious about, it's those families I'm curious about. Do they all smile and laugh and pretend that everything's fine? I know we sure did. We played down the weirdness around Princess, trying to rationalize her behavior, but the bizarre things she would do, like killing rabbits and leaving them hung on a bush behind our house. Some dogs do that to show that they love you. Cats too, my father would say. To them, it's bringing you food. To me, it looked like she was taunting us, just like the puppies years earlier. Not one of those rabbits ever had a mark on it. Princess, just like her mom and dad, was well looked after and never hurt for a meal. So it wasn't as if she were doing it to hunt. She were hunting for food. Her numerous kills were always untouched. The only thing I ever saw her eat was a kitten. We had some feral cats in the woods around our house, and one mama cat had a litter in our tool shed. Feral was really stretching it. Most of them were tame enough to be pet, the mama being among them. I returned home one day from school and headed around back to look at them. The door to the shed was open, and inside I found Princess, her jaws pink from her feast. As she devoured the last kitten, her blue eyes never left mine. The mama we found displayed on what I'd come to think of as the rabbit bush. I, t- I tip the tipping point came that same year when we found her father dead. He was the best dog we had ever had. We woke up one Saturday morning to find him in the backyard laying dead without a mark like so many rabbits before him. I could count the number of times I ever saw my father cry on one hand. That was one of them. That was also when we found out how she killed so cleanly. She would strangle her prey like a jaguar. The fur at her father's neck was still wet with her saliva. We spent the morning burying the good old faithful dog, and then he sent me and my mom away on some pretenses. No words were spoken, but there was no doubt about what he intended to do. I'm sure that there's some of you reading this that will find the notion of putting an animal down to be abominable. But others, but what other option did we have, really? Take her to the animal shelter, give her to some other family? Who could do that and go to sleep at night with a clear conscience? As it turns out, we weren't getting any sleep that night, regardless of our decision. We spent the afternoon at my uncle's house, and when I came in from playing to get a glass of water, I overheard my mom telling my uncle that sometimes she wonders if the dog was possessed or something. I sometimes wonder the same thing. Later that evening, not long after sunset, we got a call from Dad. Apparently the deed had been done. By the time we arrived home, he had already washed up and changed clothes, but there was little more he could have done to hide his wounds, even less to hide the haunted look in his eyes. Both arms and one of his legs were bandaged, and if that wasn't bad enough, what really stuck out to me all these years later was just how terrified he looked. It wasn't until I had been through combat that I realized that the expression, it was how men look after they had stared death straight in the face. My father never talked about it, but he drafted a friend from up the street to come and help, and it was from him that I got this part of the story. Princess was many things, bloodthirsty, evil chef among them, but stupid was not among them. In that, if nothing else, she took after her father. Her dad, Rocky, was famous for letting himself into the house if it was storming out, obviously. He'd figure out how to paw open the sliding glass door on the patio. What was really astounding was that he also had the presence of mind to close it behind him. Not being stupid, she knew something was up and made herself scarce, disappearing into the woods. Dad, not wanting to put it off and being on full revenge mode, called his friend from down the street and filled him in. So off on a hunt the two of them went. In his own words, she was lying for us. It sounds absurd saying that Princess lie in ambush. Then I've failed at conveying just how wrong everything about her truly was. She led them on a chase through the woods, barking whenever it seemed the stupid humans had lost her again. Then she laid up breathing beneath an overhang on the creek bank, just where the path crossed it, and waited. When she was on my father the instant he stepped down into the creek, grabbing his leg and making him fall head first into the water. Then she went straight for his throat. My dad had already lost his rifle at this point, and he grabbed her with both hands, trying to fend her off, wrestling with 115 pounds of tooth, claws, and muscle in a foot and a half of water. Princess savaged his arms all the while. At some point, he managed to work his leg between him and the dog and kicked her away from him, providing his friend a clear shot, which he took, catching Princess through the chest. He put a second one right through her head, point blank. He then helped my dad back to the house and to the emergency room, telling him he would go back to see after Princess once they had gotten home. She can rot there where she is, was all my dad had to say on that subject. After they got back from the hospital, our neighbor went back on his ATV to pick up Princess for burial. He was a dog lover like us. It just didn't seem right to him to leave her. If he had spent as much time tiptoeing around as we had, he might have felt differently. She flat out wasn't there, he had said. No blood trail, nothing. He also said that after he had been poking around for a few minutes, he noticed something else strange. No birds. It was dead quiet, the way the woods gets right before a bad storm blows in. Wisely, he got right the hell out of there. There was a storm coming, all right. That night, Duchess was clawing at the back door, wanting in. Something she had never done once in all the time that we had had it, that she had been with us. I had a dream, and in that dream, I was playing football in the backyard with some buddies, running over where a bad throw had landed near Rocky's grave. As I reached for it, Princess's head shoved up out of the ground and grabbed my hand. I woke up with a jolt and promptly scared out of roughly 10 years of my life, 10 years more of my life, by a silhouette of a German Shepherd in the hallway. It was Duchess, of course. She was sitting in the hallway, whining, wagging her tail nervously. I walked over to her and put a hand on her big doggy head and said, "What is it, girl?" That's when I heard the distinct sound of claws on glass. Something was pawing at the patio door. Thoroughly terrified, I grabbed Duchess by her collar and dragged her along with me to my parents' room, shutting the door behind me. I was 14. I was terrified. But even in the terror, retreating to our parents' room wasn't just for the security of Mommy and Daddy. That's where the guns were. I woke them up and told them what I had heard. "Sweet Jesus," my mom said. Dad got up and locked the bedroom door and said, "Y'all lock yourselves in the bathroom." I heard the patio door slide open. If any of the rest of us had any doubt about what had just come into the house, Duchess sure didn't. The only thing she had ever feared in this world was her own pup. A deep, rumbling growl vibrated in the floor beneath our feet, and Duchess's bladder let go as if on cue. Mine wasn't far from doing the same. What followed was 6 hours exercise of pure terror, punctuated by snarling attacks on the bedroom door, crashing through the rest of the house as Princess found more things to break. Whispered prayers for my mom and Latin intelligible curses from my father as another of his attempts foiled out of the bedroom were thwarted. We were without a phone. The one on my parents' nightstand was dead. We later find the phone lines were ripped. We had later find the phone lines to have been ripped out of the main box. My mom suggested that we try to make it to the car and above and beyond everything else. It was my father's response to that idea that really scared me. Of the three of us, he was supposed to be the rational thinker. But what we got instead was, "Honey, I think that's what it wants us to do." As the world through the window turned from black to gray, a quiet fell over the house. Mom and I watched through the window, craning our heads to attempt to get an eye on the patio door. But try as we might, the best we could manage was a view of most of the patio, more than enough concealment for a dog to slink in and out, even as big as Princess was. After an hour of silence, my dad quietly opened the bedroom door. I remember thinking what a useless gesture, if any attempt at stealth was. A dog's sense is much more acute than ours. That he might as well have just set off a 21 gun salute. Dad stopped in the hallway, shooed me back into the bedroom. Don't come out until I say so, okay? Carefully, he made his way through the house to the patio door. We heard him shut it before he shouted back up to us to stay in the bedroom until he told us to come out. Through the door, I could hear him moving around and what seemed to be him dropping things into a garbage bag. After 30 minutes or so, he gave us the all clear. What greeted us was a disaster. Ripped up cushions and pillows, destroyed furniture, shredded paper and books all over the floor. But most terrible were the smears of gore all over everything. Mom wondered aloud at what she drug into the house. Grim-faced, my father didn't answer. He simply turned and headed out back to bury Rocky for a second time. We cleaned up as best we could while Dad drove down to our neighbor's house to make all the appropriate calls. After all these years, I still wonder what position of homeowners insurance covered attack by undead demon ghost dog. Unspoken, we all wondered what the night would bring. As it turns out, we never got a repeat, but Duchess never left the house again. Time rolled on. Occasionally, we'd find a quote-unquote present on the rabbit bush from a friendly reminder just a friendly reminder, another token of Princess's unabiding love, quote-unquote. About 2 years into college, my dad called me to tell that our neighbor had passed. Heart attack in his sleep, the coroner said my dad. But we both were thinking, not a mark. There are plenty of nights where I wonder what the last thing was to pass before the old Belcher's eyes. I can guarantee you it stared right back at him. I've seen firsthand how it feeds. Not long after that, my folks put up the house for sale. I sort of acted as a go-between on the deal. About a week after the new owners moved in, I received a call from the man of the house. He wanted to know if we had left any pets behind when we moved. I already feared the answer. I asked why he asked. Oh, me and the kids keep seeing this white shepherd in the woods. It's really pretty. Pretty.